Hello and welcome back for my third and final installment of me reading the article titled Three Ways to Persuade by John R. Edlund. Now, if you haven't seen the previous two on pathos and ethos, please go back and watch them first because it will make a lot more sense coming into this one. However, if you've watched those already, feel free to follow along as I read logos, logical arguments, on page 6 of your reader. So, starting at paragraph 11. In our society, logic and rationality are highly valued, and this type of persuasive strategy is usually privileged over appeals to the character of the speaker or to the emotions of the audience. However, formal logic and scientific reasoning are usually not appropriate for general audiences, so we must rely on a more rhetorical type of reasoning. For Aristotle, formal arguments are based on what he calls syllogisms. This reasoning takes the form, all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. However, Aristotle notes that in ordinary speaking and writing, we often use what he calls a rhetorical syllogism or an enthymeme. I think I'm saying that right. This is an argument in which some of the premises or assertions remain unstated or are simply assumed. For example, no one in ordinary life would think that Socrates could be immortal. We would simply assume that Socrates could be killed or that he would die of natural causes after a normal lifespan. As a result, we can logically say the following. Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. Not all assumptions are as obvious as this one, however. For example, when the bubonic plague swept through Europe and parts of Asia in the 14th century, killing as much as 3/4 of the population in less than 20 years, it was not known how the disease was spread. At one point, people supposedly thought that the plague was spread by cats. If one assumes that cats spread the disease, the obvious solution to the problem is to eliminate cats, so people began killing cats on sight. However, we now know that the plague is spread by fleas, which live on rats. Because cats kill rats, killing off the cat population led to an increase in the rat population, a corresponding increase in plague carrying fleas, and thus an increase in cases of plague in humans. Killing off the cats was a logical solution to the problem of plague, but it was based on a faulty assumption. Aristotle favored arguments from probability. He distrusted evidence from written documents because they could be forged, and testimony from witnesses because they could be coerced or bribed, so he went with what was probably true. For example, if a big strong man claimed that a small weak man had beaten him up and stolen his money, Aristotle would find that improbable. Of course, today we prefer that our arguments be supported with relevant evidence in the form of facts, statistics, professional research, and other data. However, even fact-based arguments can depend on faulty assumptions. Persuasion, to a large extent, involves convincing people to accept our assumptions as probably true and to take appropriate action. Similarly, exposing questionable assumptions in someone else's argument is an effective means for preparing the audience to accept your own contrary position. Okay, so if that was if that was kind of a headache for you, I want you really to focus on paragraph 15 of this text, especially the following sentence. I'll read it again because I think for understanding logos, this is super important. About halfway through paragraph 15. Of course, today we prefer that our arguments be supported with relevant evidence in the form of facts, statistics, professional research, and other data. Okay, so I think the best way to think about logos is those things, right? Evidence, facts, statistics, expert testimony from people who know what they're talking about, scientific research. That's all logos, and I can imagine over the last several years of being in school, and your teachers say you need evidence in your arguments, in your essays. They aren't talking about emotion. Okay, they're talking about logos. So let's consider these questions before I finish the article for at the very bottom. So number one, imagine some arguments that start from faulty assumptions, such as if pigs could fly or if money grew on trees. What would be some of the logical consequences? So really what they're asking is, you may have logical solutions to problems, but if those are based on faulty assumptions, or if your arguments are based on faulty assumptions, then the rest of your reasoning is going to be kind of messed up as well. So make sure you consider that. make sure you're getting your facts right. Number 2, when you write a class assignment, do you consider the values and beliefs of the teacher? Do you consider what arguments and what kinds of support will be most persuasive? Do you choose words and make stylistic choices to have the most persuasive effect on your teacher? How would you write differently for another audience, such as your best friend or brother or sister? I'm going to guess no, that you don't consider the values and beliefs of the teacher. But this is talking about something a little bit different that we've talked about previously, in that you have to consider your audience and the situation when you're writing, and use your appeals, whether that be logos, ethos, or pathos, based on that. I'm going to guess that most of your writing in school is heavily logos based. I think you do that intuitively. Okay, number 3, go to a news site and look at the headlines of several articles. Are there hidden assumptions in the headlines? How do headline writers try to persuade you to click? Now click on one of the headlines and read the article quickly. Ask yourself, how do the arguments and the support offered by the writer connect with the values and beliefs of the intended audience? What assumptions does the author take for granted the audience will accept? So, go to any news article, anything online, and try to see if there's any faulty assumptions that the writer just thinks the audience might accept. Okay. Really, logos, pretty straightforward. Logos, logic, is what it sounds like. Using evidence to support your argument. Just make sure your evidence is accurate, because it could undermine you. All right, I'll read paragraph 17, and then we're done. It's tempting to see ethos, pathos, and logos as separate parts of a text, but in fact, they almost always work together. The same element in a speech or writing can simultaneously function in all 3 ways. A detailed description of an assault rifle, a bird's nest, or an abstract painting, to choose some random examples, could be part of a logical argument, but also simultaneously give an impression of the speaker and cause an emotional effect in the audience. Each appeal is a perspective, a way of looking at a text and how it does what it does. They are not pigeonholes in which to sort specific elements of a text, but concerns that all writers must deal with, and resources that all writers can use to achieve their persuasive goals. Sometimes a writer will depend on one sort of appeal much more than another, such as logos in a scientific article or ethos in a campaign speech. However, you will find elements of all 3 in each text you study, and they are worth thinking about in every text that you write. They are useful concepts that helps you understand why a speech or article affects you the way it does. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope that was helpful. I hope you follow along. Feel free to always come back to these if you need them. Like I said, ethos, pathos, and logos are not going away. In fact, later on, we'll be adding a 4th one that you don't need to worry about for now. But it is important that you understand those 3 things moving forward. Thanks for watching.